Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma. Okay, now children, how are you? How is everyone? Hope that everyone is well. The topic that we are going to learn today is types of test data. But before we move on to this one, can we all recall the term data? What is data actually? We have studied this under the heading of data types. The ones who haven't learned that topic, please, I request you to go through the video of the data types so that you can be aware of the term data and the data types also. Now, data is raw facts and figures. A few of you have written this answer. That's correct. And what is testing actually? Don't we have testing done in real life also all the time? Like we test you for your exams, we test you so that we can send you for the final examination. So testing is an activity that keeps on happening with us every single day. So we also do it, you also do it, and everyone is doing it. Now, what's the use of learning or be aware of the types of test data? So if, for example, I'm designing a program, so what I need to know is the person for whom I'm designing the program should be getting the correct data. And like, for example, when he runs the program should be responding as per his requirement. And for that, what we need to do is before we actually give the program to the final user, we should be checking that whether the program is responding properly or not, and is it accepting the normal or the valid test data. So the very first thing that you need to know is all the values that should be accepted by the program are called normal or valid. Fine. The ones that are in the category, the ones that are in the range, they are treated as the normal values or the valid values. Second one, abnormal, erroneous, or invalid. Any of the three terms, if they come in front of you, you should be aware that here we mean something that should be rejected by the program because it is not within the range, that is outside the criteria, that should be rejected. Like, for example, if I say name, a name should be containing only the letters or a space or maybe a dot, because sometimes the people do abbreviate their names. So if a name is containing any abnormal characters, then it should be immediately rejected. And that is what an abnormal value is. And we design programs, we perform some validation checks also for the same reason that you will study later. But right now we are only concentrating on abnormal values, normal values, extreme values, and the boundary values. Third one is my extreme test data. Now that is very simple. The ones, just remember, extreme test data means one value that is the least acceptable and last value is the maximum acceptable. So within the maximum and the minimum are the normal values, and the minimum attainable and the maximum attainable is called the extreme value or the extreme test data. I hope that I'm clear. And lastly, we have boundary test data. So what is boundary or these? Let's learn it with the help of an example of an activity. And the activity is a test of 50 marks was taken. The test data is now 50 marks test. What are the attainable values? What do you think is obtainable or can be attained by a child if the paper was of 50 marks? Yes, correct. So you can see a few examples are being mentioned here. Normal test data means any value inside the range that will be accepted by the program. Remember that you need to mention the test data. Along with that, you'll have to be aware that what will happen the program if the value entered is a normal value, if the entered value is an abnormal value or an extreme value or a boundary value. Be very cautious in answering this question. Now, as an example is mentioned here, any value inside the range that will be accepted, for example, 23, 45, 34. These are only 2 or 3 values, but you can name many also. Like, for example, if a student says 2, that is also normal because that is within the range. Any child wrote 12, that is also normal. And the child wrote 48, that is also normal. Another one wrote 40, that is also normal, because these all are attainable in a test that was taken out of 50 marks. If it's very simple, attainable values within the range values that should be accepted are called the normal values. Second one is abnormal. something that is outside the range. So you can see, and that abnormal value should be rejected by the program. Like you can see, an example is mentioned as -3 or 20. By the way, what about why 20 is treated as an abnormal value? Okay, now that's great. The ones who have studied the data types, they are able to answer accurately that in a paper of 50 marks, a student cannot attain TWENTY, because definitely that is a string value. And when we talk about the marks, marks are going to be integer. And that is why 20, although seems to be the correct one, although seems to be the normal test data, is actually falling in the category of abnormal test data. So the ones who can recall the data types topic, that's wonderful, that they can answer immediately. They can create a connection between the two terms and they are able to answer. Any ambiguity, any questions before I proceed to the extreme one? Okay, now what do you think will be the extreme value? As explained, extreme value means the minimum attainable and the maximum attainable. Okay, that's a good try. 50, fine, because that is a maximum out of 50 marks. Can a student attain 51? Definitely not. But as far as 50 out of 50 is concerned, that is attainable, and that is why that is your extreme data. But the minimum one is going to be 1. The largest and the smallest values that can be are accepted, that is 1 and 50. They are treated as extreme test data. Fine? Clear? Okay, now this is something which is really interesting, that minimum attainable is not a 0, minimum attainable is at least a 1. Lastly, we have boundary. Just try to understand, it's very, very important that you comprehend this thing, that what is a boundary one? Now, one thing that you need to know is boundary is a set. It includes one value that is going to be rejected and second value will be accepted. So if you see this one, we can see boundary data for, I'm going to take the values of extreme. Now, this is very simple, a simple way I'll tell you. What we do is we take the extreme values first, like extreme value is 1, so I wrote 1. And then on the next line, extreme value, the next extreme value was 50, I wrote 50. Fine, any problem? That's great. Then I moved back to the value 1, and then what I wrote is I wrote one value before 1, before the minimum, that is a 0. And when I moved on to 50, after 50, I wrote 51. By the way, why didn't I write 49? Why didn't I write 2? I could have made a set of 1 and 2 for boundary, and I could have made a set of 49 and 50 for boundary. Why didn't I take these values? Okay, that's wonderful. Because they are in the category of 49 is attainable. That is why it is a normal value. Similarly, 2 is also attainable. That is also not a normal value. So these are not going to be treated as an abnormal value. Remember what I said, boundary data involves one value to be accepted and second value to be rejected. So if I move to the example will be for 1, I'll take 0, 1, and for 50, I'll take 50 and 51. Any questions? Okay. Then you have to mention about the 0 value, that 0 will be rejected and 1 will be accepted. Same case goes here. You'll have to talk about 50 will be accepted and 51 will be rejected. Any questions? Okay, that's wonderful. Are we ready for an assignment? This is my activity. And this one is very much similar to what we have done. Very quickly, I want you to write down the answer. The end of term examinations are marked out of 20. Provide the following: 2 sets of normal data and the expected results. And when we say expected results, remember that we need to talk about that what will happen. Will they be accepted or will they be rejected? 2 sets of erroneous or abnormal data and their expected results, and lastly, 2 sets of boundary data and their expected results. I'm giving you maximum of 3 minutes to do this activity. Very quick. Okay, that's great. Some of you have started answering. That's really wonderful. Okay, now let's wait for others also to finish the work. Are we all done? That's great. I give you 3 minutes and you people have done it within a minute only. That's wonderful. Within a minute. That's really great. Let's see the examples. Normal data, any value inside the range that will be accepted. Again, remember here we mean, okay, now just for your sake, I've written the definition once again inside the range. So the ones who are still facing problem, they can relate to this, that normal data involves all the values within the range, and any student can write any value, the one that is within the range that will be accepted. Like a few examples I've written, maybe some of you have written 3 or 15 or 18, or maybe um, uh, some of you have written 10, or maybe some have written 12. So these all are your normal values because they all are within the range. Abnormal, outside the range, and that will be rejected. And you can see FOURTEEN, although attainable, but written in string will not be accepted, and that is why it is falling in the category of abnormal data. Moving on to the next one, we have the boundary one. Let's see how many of us are able to do it accurately. For boundary data, for one is, now again, if you can recall, the minimum attainable is 1 and the maximum attainable is 20. So although extreme data is not being asked, still we are going to relate to the same. We'll recall that what is the category of how do we find out the extreme value. And in boundary, we actually write down on one line the minimum attainable, or the minimum or the smallest value. And on the next line, we write down the maximum or the highest value. And then we write down one adjacent to it, like boundary for 1 will be 0 and 1, and boundary for 20 will be 20 and 21. In the first category, 0 will be rejected and 1 will be accepted. In the second set, 20, 21, 21 will be rejected and 20 will be accepted. So the ones who have done boundary test data, great, that you have understood it well. And that is the real trick that you need to understand and remember. Are we ready for another activity? Okay. A park allows teenagers, and the teenagers, I hope many of us know it, but still, actually, all those ages that contain the word teen, like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, are allowed to enter a certain area. Provide the following: 2 sets of normal data and the expected results, 2 sets of abnormal, okay, now some or maybe 2 sets of erroneous data and the expected results, and 2 sets of boundary data and the expected results. Come on, be quick. And this should not take more than 2 minutes. Your time starts now. Okay, now that's great. Many of you have done it. Let's see. Okay, now here for your sake, I have written all the values that are in the category of normal. So you can see for yourself that what are going to be the, like if someone has written 14, 15, that's correct. Someone had written 14, 16, that is also correct, because they're asking for 2 sets. So this is why you have to mention any 2 values that are within the range, and then you will be mentioning them as normal data, which will be accepted. So if any 2 values that are written right now, if you have written any of these 2 values, then your answer is the correct one. So you can give yourself 2 out of 2. Fine. The next one is abnormal. Again, a lot of answers can be written by different students. So only a few examples are being mentioned here. Some could have, by the way, 11 in this category. 11 is actually an abnormal value because that is a not allowable value, because that will not be allowed by the park management. If a child is 11 years old, then he will not be allowed to enter that area because he is not in the category of a teenager. So similarly, 14 or 44, all these are abnormal values that should be rejected. And lastly, the boundary. By the way, boundary, as I explained you, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It means that the boundary value will be 13 and 19. That because like 13 and 19 I have taken, which are for the extreme values, and then I've written the boundary data. For 13, boundary data will be 12, 13. Out of this, 12 will be rejected and 13 will be accepted. And boundary data for 19 will be 19, 20. 20 will be rejected and 19 will be accepted. So I hope that you all are clear about this topic. Any questions, any ambiguity, anything that is a concern for you? So the ones who have done it accurately, just remember that you have to mention. And then since this question is asking for two sets or maybe some, so in some you can write any values, but as far as two is concerned, you have to mention any two values here. Now, just one caution. I want to tell you people, one thing is, if my paper asks me to write down one data item and I write down three, please remember that the examiner will only accept the first one as the answer and will actually cut the rest of the two. No matter your luck that whether your first answer was incorrect and the rest of the two were correct, so you will get no mark, because please remember, be very cautious. This is what the examiners do. They actually want to test your understanding, that has the student understood or not. So one thing, be cautious what the question is it asking you for providing two sets of data, or whether it's asking you for providing some values, or whether it's asking you for providing one value, one data item. Be clear that what they want and then answer. Be very clear about it. And one more thing is, if they have asked you to write down what is the expected result, then you have to mention that whether the data will be accepted or rejected. Fine. And then only you'll be able to score full marks. Okay, now, I hope that this topic is very much clear. So now, be ready for my next video where I'll be talking about validation checks. And I hope that that will help you in creating a link between this data type and the validation checks also. And please keep on watching my videos. Jazakallah khairan kasira. If you have really liked my videos, please subscribe my channel, share it with your friends and family so they all are going to benefit from my videos. Allah Hafiz.